Everyone thought you were weak, until God revealed your true power. They looked at you and saw silence. They saw patience. They saw someone who didn't fight back, someone who didn't argue, someone who chose peace when chaos was easier, and in their limited understanding, labeled you naive, soft, easy to overlook, easy to walk over. They mistook your restraint for weakness, your kindness for lack of strength, your humility for absence of power. But what they failed to realize is that God was doing something in you that they could never comprehend. You weren't being passive. You were being prepared. There were nights they never saw. Nights when you questioned everything, when you felt the weight of being misunderstood pressing on your chest. Times when you wanted to speak up, to defend yourself, to prove them wrong. But something deep inside held you back. That wasn't fear. That was divine restraint. That was God shaping your spirit, teaching you discipline, building a strength that doesn't come from noise, but from alignment, because real power doesn't shout. Real power waits. They didn't see the battles you were fighting internally, the growth, the transformation, the breaking and rebuilding, while they were busy judging you. Based on what they could see, God was working on what they couldn't. He was refining your character, sharpening your discernment, strengthening your faith. You were never weak. You were under construction. And here's the truth that will shake everything they thought they knew about you. God doesn't choose the loudest, the most aggressive, or the most obvious. He chooses the ones who are willing, the ones who can endure, the ones who can stay grounded when everything around them tries to pull them out of alignment. That's you. You were chosen, not because you fit their expectations, but because you were willing to trust God, even when it made no sense, even when it made you look foolish in their eyes, even when it cost you recognition, validation, and sometimes even respect. They laughed, they doubted, they underestimated. But they didn't understand that your silence wasn't empty. It was full of purpose. Every time you held your tongue, you were gaining control. Every time you walked away, instead of reacting, you were building authority. Every time you chose faith over fear, you were stepping deeper into your calling. And now, something is shifting. You can feel it, can't you? That quiet strength inside you is no longer just something you carry. It's something that's about to be revealed. The same people who thought they had you figured out are about to witness a version of you they never expected. Not because you changed who you are, but because God is unveiling who you've been becoming all along. This isn't about proving them wrong. It's about stepping into what was already written for you. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life where the hidden becomes visible, where the overlooked becomes undeniable, where the one who was dismissed becomes the one who can't be ignored. You're stepping into that moment. And the power you carry, it's not loud, but it's unshakable. It's not aggressive, but it's unstoppable. It doesn't come from ego. It comes from God. And that makes it something no one can take from you, no one can replicate, and no one can stand against. So let them remember how they saw you before. Let them hold on to their old assumptions, because what's coming next will completely redefine everything they thought they knew. They judged your silence. but they're not ready for what comes next. They saw your kindness as weakness, and that was their biggest mistake. You gave your heart without conditions. You chose understanding over conflict, patience over pride, and mercy over revenge. And instead of seeing strength in that, they saw an opportunity. They thought your calm spirit meant you wouldn't stand up for yourself. They assumed your gentle nature meant you didn't know your worth. They believed your silence meant you had nothing to say. So, spoke over you. They dismissed you. They overlooked you like you were background noise. In a world that rewards the loudest voices, and that hurt. Not because you needed their approval, but because you expected them to see you clearly. You thought they would recognize the sincerity in your actions, the purity in your intentions. But instead, they created a version of you in their minds that was smaller, weaker, easier to control. They didn't see your depth. They didn't feel your strength. They didn't understand your spirit. And maybe there were moments when you started to question yourself, moments when their words echoed louder than your truth, when being called too soft or too nice made you wonder if you needed to change just to survive. You felt the pressure to harden your heart, to build walls, to become someone colder, someone less like you. But something inside you resisted, because deep down, your spirit knew that your kindness was never your weakness. It was your calling. See, chosen ones walk a different path while others are driven by ego, pride, and the need to dominate. You are guided by something higher. You move with intention, not impulse. You respond with wisdom, not reaction. And to a world that thrives on chaos, that kind of energy is confusing, even threatening. That's why they misunderstood you. They couldn't measure your strength because it didn't look like theirs. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, and it didn't demand attention. Your strength was quiet, steady, rooted. It came from a place they had never experienced. A connection with God that grounded you, even when everything around you tried to shake you. But being chosen doesn't come without a cost. You felt the isolation, the loneliness of being in rooms where no one truly understood you, the frustration of being judged for things that were actually your greatest strengths, the pain of giving your best and still being seen as not enough or too much at the same time. They saw your patience and called it passivity. They saw your humility and called it insecurity. They saw your peace and called it weakness. But what they were really seeing was a level of self-control they didn't have, a level of faith they couldn't comprehend, a level of strength that didn't need to prove itself to anyone. And while they were busy underestimating you, something powerful was happening beneath the surface. God was building you in ways no one could see. Every time you were misunderstood, your spirit grew stronger. Every time you were judged unfairly, your discernment became sharper. Every time you were overlooked, your dependence on God deepened. You weren't being diminished, you were being developed. And that's the part they missed, because while they were focused on who they thought you were, God was shaping who you were becoming. He was teaching you when to speak and when to stay silent, when to walk away and when to stand firm. He was giving you a kind of strength that doesn't come from external validation, but from divine purpose. So no, You were never naive. You were aware. But you chose peace. You were never weak. You were disciplined. You were never less than them. You were just different. And that difference, it's about to become undeniable, because the same qualities they mocked, the same traits they dismissed, are the very things God is going to use to elevate you. Your kindness will become your influence. Your patience will become your power. Your silence will become your authority. And when that happens, they won't recognize you, not because you changed, but because they never truly saw you in the first place. What they didn't realize was that God was preparing you in silence. While they were watching your outside, God was changing your inside. They only saw the surface, the quiet version of you. The one who didn't react, didn't argue, didn't try to prove anything. To them, it looked like nothing was happening, like you were stuck, like you weren't growing. But what they couldn't see was the deep, invisible work God was doing within you. Because transformation like yours doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the hidden places, in the moments no one applauds, in the seasons where it feels like you're standing still, but internally everything is shifting. Those struggles you went through, they weren't random. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every delay, it all carried a purpose. Even when it didn't make sense, even when it felt unfair, God was using it all to shape something stronger inside you. When people walked away, you learned how to stand on your own. When doors closed, you learned how to trust God instead of outcomes. When you were misunderstood, you learned how to be secure in your identity without needing validation. That's not weakness. That's refinement. You were being stretched in ways that were uncomfortable, even painful at times. There were days you felt like you were breaking, like the pressure was too much, like maybe you weren't built for this path. But every time you felt like giving up something inside, you kept going. That wasn't just willpower, that was God strengthening your spirit. He was teaching you patience in a world that demands instant results, teaching you endurance in a culture that quits too soon, teaching you faith in moments where there was no visible evidence that anything was working out in your favor. And slowly, quietly, you began to change. Not in ways people could easily notice. You didn't suddenly become louder or more aggressive. You didn't need to announce your growth. But internally, your mindset shifted. Your perspective deepened. Your reactions became more controlled, more intentional. Things that used to shake you no longer had the same power. Situations that once drained you started to reveal lessons instead of pain. You stopped chasing approval and started walking in purpose. That's what happens when God works on the inside. It's not always visible at first, but it's undeniable over time. And the truth is, most people don't understand this kind of transformation because they're focused on external changes. They look for immediate results, quick success, obvious signs, but what God was doing in you wasn't meant to be rushed or displayed too early. It had to be built the right way, because what God builds in silence lasts. He was removing things from your heart that didn't belong there. Pride, fear, doubt, the need to be accepted by people who were never meant to understand you. And in their place, He was planting something stronger. Confidence rooted in him. Peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. Strength that doesn't break under pressure. You weren't just growing. You were being transformed. And transformation like that changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you handle challenges, how you move through life. You begin to operate differently, not from emotion, but from alignment, not from insecurity, but from purpose. And eventually, that internal shift starts to show externally. Not because you're trying to prove something, but because it can't be hidden anymore. People start noticing a difference they can't quite explain. The same person they once overlooked now carries a presence, a quiet authority, a strength that doesn't need validation. And suddenly, their perception begins to shift. But by then, you're no longer concerned with what they think, because you know what God has done in you. You know the battles you've fought, the lessons you've learned, the growth you've experienced in silence. And that gives you a confidence that doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within. It comes from Him. And then there comes a moment where everything you've been through, everything you've learned, everything God has been building inside you, aligns all at once. A moment where the hidden becomes visible. A moment where the quiet transformation reveals its power. And when that moment arrives, it doesn't take long. It doesn't need explanation. It just happens. And when the moment came, everything changed in an instant. They didn't believe in you until they had no choice but to see it. For the longest time, you were invisible to them. Not because you lacked value, but because they lacked vision. They were so used to seeing you in a certain light, quiet, patient, unassuming, that they never imagined there was another side to you, a stronger side, a deeper side, a version of you that had been growing, evolving, preparing, right in front of them. And then one day something shifted. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was undeniable. The way you carried yourself changed. The way you spoke, calm, clear, and grounded, started to command attention. The same voice they once ignored now held weight. The same presence they overlooked now filled the room in a way they couldn't explain. You didn't become someone new. You became who you were always meant to be. And that confidence, it didn't come from ego. It came from everything you survived. Every moment you held back when you wanted to react. Every time you chose growth over comfort. Every lesson that shaped you when no one was watching. Now it shows in your posture, in your decisions, in the way you no longer shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And they notice, the same people who once underestimated you, now watch you differently. There's a pause when you speak, a shift in their tone when they address you. That casual dismissal, it's gone. That quiet disrespect, replaced with something closer to caution. Even respect, not because you demanded it, but because you became undeniable. There's something powerful about someone who doesn't need to prove anything, yet naturally commands recognition. That's the energy you carry now. You're no longer trying to convince anyone of your worth. You're no longer explaining your intentions or defending your character. You simply stand in your truth, and that alone changes everything. Because when you know who you are, people can feel it. They can feel the difference between the old you, the one who tolerated being overlooked, and the version of you now, who understands their value without needing permission. You're not louder, but you're stronger. You're not aggressive, but you're firm. You don't chase attention, but somehow it finds you. And that shift confuses them, because they remember how they used to see you. They remember how they treated you. And now, they're forced to reconcile that memory with the reality standing in front of them. Some will admire it. Some will respect it. And some will feel uncomfortable. Because your growth exposes their misjudgment. It reminds them that they underestimated someone who was never small to begin with. That they overlooked someone who was always carrying something powerful inside. And now they have to face the fact that they were wrong. But here's the difference now. You're not doing this for them. You're not rising to prove a point. You're rising because it's your time. Everything you went through, the silence, the struggle, the waiting, it all led to this version of you. The one who doesn't need validation. The one who doesn't question their purpose. The one who walks with a quiet certainty that can't be shaken by opinions or doubt. You've stepped into alignment, and when that happens, respect isn't something you chase. It's something that naturally follows. But with this new level comes a new awareness. You start to see people differently. You recognize who truly supports you and who only acknowledges you now because they see your growth. You become more selective with your energy, more intentional with your presence, because you've learned that not everyone who doubted you deserves access to you now. Not everyone who ignored you gets to stand beside you when you rise. And that's not bitterness, that's wisdom. So you move differently, not out of pride, but out of understanding. You stand strong, not to intimidate, but because you finally see your worth clearly. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, neither can they. But here's what they still don't understand. This version of you, the one they're just now beginning to recognize. It's only the beginning, because what God started in you wasn't meant to stop here. This level of confidence, this level of growth, this level of presence, it's just a glimpse of what's ahead. There's more being built, more being revealed, more that's about to unfold, in ways even you can't fully see yet. So let them watch. Let them adjust to this version of you. Because just when they think they finally figured you out, but this isn't even your final level. Something bigger is coming. You were never weak. You were chosen to rise differently. From the very beginning, your path was never meant to look like everyone else's. While others rushed to prove themselves, you were being taught to trust. While others fought for attention, you were learning how to move in silence. And while they misunderstood you, judged you, and labeled you based on what they could see, God was working on something far deeper within you. You remember what it felt like to be overlooked, to be in rooms where your presence wasn't fully acknowledged, to give your best and still feel like it wasn't enough in their eyes. They saw your calm nature and called it weakness. They saw your patience and thought you lacked strength. They saw your kindness and assumed you were naive. But what they didn't understand is that your journey was never about fitting into their expectations. It was about fulfilling God's purpose. Every moment of being misunderstood wasn't a setback. It was preparation. Every time you were underestimated, it was an opportunity for God to build something stronger inside you. You weren't being ignored. You were being set apart. You weren't falling behind. You were being positioned, because chosen ones don't rise the same way others do. Your transformation didn't happen in public. It didn't come with applause or recognition. It happened in the quiet moments, in the struggles no one saw, in the battles you fought internally, where your faith was tested, your patience stretched, and your strength refined. You were being shaped, and now look at you, stronger, not because life was easy, but because you endured. Wiser, not because you knew everything, but because you learned. More confident, not because people validated you, but because God revealed your worth to you. That's the difference. You no longer question who you are. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer seek approval from those who never understood your path in the first place. You stand firm. You move with purpose. You carry a quiet power that speaks louder than any words ever could. And the same people who once doubted you, they see it now. Maybe not all of them will admit it, but they feel it. The shift, the growth, the undeniable presence of someone who has been through the fire and came out refined, not broken, not bitter, but built. And here's the truth you need to hold on to moving forward. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about becoming who God called you to be. It was about stepping into an identity that can't be shaken by opinions, circumstances, or doubt. You are chosen, not because you are perfect, but because you were willing to grow, willing to endure, willing to trust God, even when the path didn't make sense. And that willingness, that faith, is what brought you here. So don't go back to doubting yourself. Don't go back to shrinking. Don't go back to questioning your worth, because now you know that your silence was strength, your patience was power, your journey was purpose. And what's ahead of you? It's greater than anything behind you. Walk boldly in that truth. Stand firmly in your calling, and never forget who you are. If this message spoke to your spirit, comment Amen below. Let it be a declaration of your faith and your identity. Subscribe to this channel so you stay connected to messages that remind you of your purpose. Like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth today, because you're not the only one on this journey. There are others who feel what you felt, who've been misunderstood like you, who are rising just like you. And sometimes, all it takes is one message to remind them that they're not alone. Keep going, keep growing, keep trusting, because God is not finished with you yet. They thought you were naive, but now they know who you really are.